So the great Sufi Imam Mansur Halaj once stated, between you and me, there is me. Eliminate the me so only you remains. And that's the goal, the elimination of me, the idea of me. Now that can bring up quite a few feelings. As many of you know, obviously I do talks as well, and it's an interesting question asked at one of the talks. It was a case of, well, what happens, do I disappear? And there's a fear in people as to taking that final step of finally realizing what they truly are, because they've read something in a book, or they've read the experience of some sage who, at that moment or that point of realization, lost all sense of themselves. So have spent like the next 6 months of their life completely, gone out, and can't function in the most basic of ways. And that's a real concern, because people feel that what will happen is that they will lose the people they love. There'll be no sense of recognition. So, I'm a father, or I'm a husband, or I'm a wife, or, I'm a daughter, or I'm a son. And I will lose those relationships because I will not see me anymore. And when it was brought up, it was like, well, firstly, that would have been the experience of that person at that moment in that place. Now, you cannot be that person, and that person can't be you. You can only be you, and your story is different. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen to you. The other thing as well is there's this fear that at this moment of realization, all sense of self disappears. Not really, not while you're here. In death, everything disappears, yes, in the physical death, when obviously everything just stops. But in an awakening or liberation or whatever you happen, and you're still here, it's not time for you to shuffle off the mortal coil, so to speak. What you find is you're still here. I remember vividly, after ending all seeking, still going back to the flat that I lived in, still functioning, still talking to people. And I can't remember, obviously, like having this fear that, oh no, I disappear and all this stuff. But for many, it's a very real fear. It's that they're keeping themselves from themselves by engaging in this idea that they're going to disappear. You're not. You're not going to not recognize anybody or anything. In fact, I would say enhance relationships, because none of the crap is there. None of the whole game playing is there, or anything that kind of, in a sense, over time just disappears. You want to engage in people in the most authentic of ways, and in the best of ways, and there's a real compassion there. And in that sense, that really enhances relationships, it enhances communication, it enhances pretty much everything, because the ideas that are being dropped, which are creating so much fear and agitation in you, they disappear. So it's a case of the mind, the ego, the false ideas of yourself go back to their rightful places, and any ideas which need to be eliminated. The Sufis talk of zikr and removing, the rust from the heart, so that which already is can shine through. And all that liberation is, on the process leading up to it and after it, is really the elimination of all that is false, so that truth can shine. Because a lot of people are covering their true selves up. They're acting small, they're playing small, they're not trusting themselves. And what happens is, sooner or later, this drama or this act that they've engaged in order to keep themselves where they are takes on a life of itself, and they start to believe it's real. And they will fight tooth and nail to keep this so-called, reality in place. But that reality is just nothing but a hodgepodge of false ideas. Do you disappear? No. Not in the sense that you think. Are you still going to function the next day? Yes. Are you still going to be able to pay your bills, recognize your daughter, or your child, or your husband or wife? Yes. Will you have memory? Yes. And even if we look at the very act of enlightenment, it's not really enlightenment or awakening. It's just permission. I've said this in an earlier video. It's just permission to yourself to be what you already know yourself to be. You cannot seek something you don't know. So in some sense, you already know it. You're just uncovering. All you're doing is you're uncovering yourself. and all the crap that you've piled up on top of yourself, in believing that you are X, Y, Z navigating throughout the world doing this and this and everything, and that you actually exist in some way. Remember, the you I'm referring to is a false idea of you, not the true you. The true you is always here. And sooner or later, with enough, I don't know, technique, self-inquiry, or just popping out of the illusion or whatever, what you'll find is you just see yourself for what you truly are. Because 9 times out of 10, there's always a familiarity and a knowing. Not as a matter of fact, 10 times out of 10, there's always a familiarity and a knowing that, hold on, it's me. I know this already. Well, of course you do. You're looking for yourself. You're already there. Yes, you may have covered yourself up with a few ideas, but you're always there. And it's those ideas that don't want to leave because they've taken up residence. And they quite like having power over you, because in this day and age what we're finding is, I believe the American mystic Les Levinson said that happiness is your basic nature, and yet happy is the hardest thing in the world to do. People are so engaged in their stories, and yet if you were to just stop and just trust yourself, what you would find is a lot of the agitation and the story and everything would just, in a sense, just wash away. And you'd wonder why you'd given it so much, you'd actually wonder why you'd given it so much kind of like weight. It starts here, it's always here, and it ends here, and it all resolves here. And it can start as simple as right now, just sitting there and think, okay, what next? Well, just sitting there. Have that confidence, have that trust, and have that faith that it will be okay, and live with that. So many people are looking for the great grand unifying theory. It's actually where you are. But that's very hard to accept, because there's an alter ego that's telling you that, guess what? No, it's somewhere out. Because sometimes even those who are engaged in some very heavy seeking, their true self is not engaged in true seeking, because it already is this whole false idea of them. That's what the Sufis talk of the zikr. It's remembering who you are, remembrance of Allah. And in order to do that, you have to eliminate the false ideas. It's where the ideas of the mind, the ego, and all these things come into it. Eliminating them, putting those that need to be put back into their rightful places. So again, a lot of ideas we can kind of really build on them, and I'll build in further videos. But the simple answer, I don't want to disappear, behave. It's not going to be what you think.